gentlemen. Welcome to the very first official episode of Historic Hot Laps. I'm your host, Alex Daniels. I guess we should start off with what this show's really going to be about. I'd like to share the stories, some of the unknown things, some of the history, how it ties into today's world in motorsport. A lot of the classic stuff that is not necessarily recorded officially, right? There's newspaper clippings and things of that nature that kind of share those older stories, but a lot of it's lost in time. So we're going to cover a lot of history. We're going to cover a lot of current events, kind of try to tie the two together. This is very fan-based type content. I do have some history in motorsports in my family, and this was just a good way for me to get that outlet and try to preserve these things. There's a lot of innovative, lesser known individuals out there that really need some sort of spotlight on what they did to generate all forms of motorsports and where we're at today, whether it be some kind of chassis innovation, safety innovation, a lot of random drawn up on the barn floor ideas for a lot of cars in the homemade days before there were spec chassis and everything else. So I'd just like to kind of give a shout out to those kind of people over episode after episode. I said we'll touch on a lot of things. We'll recap current events as much as possible as well. Just a fun kind of outlet for the fans. I do very much encourage some fan engagement. We will do kind of a Q&A section if we get enough input from the fans, as many responses as possible. Please reach out to us currently at HistoricHotLaps@gmail.com. We'll monitor it. Any kind of good questions we get in, we'll try to follow up, on the next episode or an episode after that. We'll kind of bank them depending on the subject, but we'll do what we can to get through them. Things grow. Like I said, this is a low budget, very amateur operation, but we just want to appreciate all forms of motorsport and where we're at with things today. So covering that, I would like to take this time, I guess. Let's get started. We had Indy qualifying this last week, recording this, a day after qualification and all that. And man, what a good weekend it was. Obviously, we had a lot of rain out practice, we had a lot of issues, a lot of engine swaps. It seemed like Chevrolet tuning itself had a few issues that they obviously got worked out due to the results, but just quite a wild ride there for Fast Friday, setting the first part of the field, and then Fast 12 last chance qualifier was pretty awesome. We saw some guys that lost a bunch of luck in that. Some one-offs, obviously. Got to bring up one of my favorites, Connor Daly. He lost. He had that plenum event on that solid run he had going. Kind of hurt him. Stayed in it. Hurt him. He probably could have been up there. Obviously, his teammate Ryan Hunter-Reay made the Fast 12. Obviously, I do believe those cars are very similar, and Daly could have easily gotten up there with the rest of the Chevrolet boys. But these things happen earlier in the day, luckily, in the timing and all that. Larson had a plenum event. Carpenter had to throw his run away for the same issue, loss of power and whatnot. Ward had issues. Rasmussen had issues. A lot of issues. Not all Chevrolet. Honda had a fair share of things too, but it seemed to be very dominant tuning on the Chevrolet side of things. There's a lot of engine swaps. Tons of engine swaps before, during practice, before the GP, which is pretty standard, right? Run the whole month of May on a new motor, but then you get guys run GP and then have to swap again. There's a whole lot going on there, which I've read a lot of things about different internals being used in different teams, and some teams had outdated internals, and that caused these issues. And it seems to be all based on stockpiling parts, and there's a push rod design change, which has been out for some time now. But some of these older teams, these one-offs, they're going to buy parts at the best prices, try to get their cars in the field. They're going to have more of those issues if they're not running the most updated parts. Pretty common sense stuff in the business side of things. So for that is, lack of better words, is just part of the sport, right? You're not going to pull a one-off team and try to hang with a Penske front row lockout. Like, it's just not feasible for some of these drivers. So with that, though, it was a great qualifying effort from everybody. Got to give it to Nolan Siegel. Man, he had a rough week. but I liked how his team put it on the radio right after his crash there in qualifying. Spoiler alert. I guess I should say that beforehand, but we're recapping news as these things, it's going to happen. But they said, left it all out on the track, and that's what they did. You've got to respect the Coyne team and what they do for these up and coming drivers and all the things that they go through, the amount of stress they go through. I'm sure I saw more coverage of Coyne up and down pit lane and in the garages and back and forth than I did anybody. For a smaller operation, obviously it's full time, but for a smaller operation, that's so much respect to that. And I know Siegel's an amazing driver. He's a young kid, super talented. He'll definitely make it through it. It's not going to be his last 500. It's not going to be his last attempt. First one's not going to be his last one. So we'll see a lot more from him as time goes on. I have no doubt about that. Covering some more stuff here. Obviously, man, Ray Hall's team, what a struggle. And, I just don't know what to say for the guy. Obviously, I've been a fan of Ray Hall for a long time. All the respect in the world. I almost wonder if he's getting to that point in his career, if it's just not, his reflexes aren't there. He's not what he used to be. He's not as young as he used to be. He's always been a bigger guy for a driver, right? He's not a Kyle Larson, he's twice a Kyle Larson as far as stature goes. Obviously, with Siegel crashing out, that was unfortunately Ray Hall's good luck to stay in. Time-wise, it's hard to say. I think Ray Hall was still safe. I mean, you saw the reaction, Courtney's face when she was watching the replay, at Ray Hall's pit box there and saw that crash, and nobody wants to see that. But Siegel's good. He got out, left it on the track, and Ray Hall's in. So I guess feedback-wise, what are your guys' opinions on where Ray Hall's at in his career right now? I know his name's on the team. I really think he would benefit in being kind of like where TK is now with Arrow McLaren, a sports director type position, consultant to advice. Along those lines, would be pretty awesome to see him go about, still be team involved. Obviously, his dad owning the team, I'm sure he has his stake in it. But he's got so many other irons and so many fires. I don't know that being up front in the race is priority anymore. He's got younger kids, family man, car dealerships. He's got it all. And like I said, I'm a huge Ray Hall fan. I just don't know if it's in him for a full-time ride anymore. Maybe he's a one-off for the 500 if they have package available, but he consults the other time, maybe take the Castro Neves route. I don't know personally what the intention is with keeping him going like he is. He's had a couple good qualifications. They seem to have a string of bad luck, which that is incredibly unfortunate. It's just part of the sport, right? It's just, you're going to go through these peaks and valleys, and that's where he's at. So enough on that subject. Going back to the rest of qualifying. Obviously, Penske showed up, dominated. There's a lot of chatter online about that. Are they using something somebody else doesn't have? All this stuff after the push to pass gate of 2024. Obviously, IndyCar has to stay on top of that now. Supposedly, there is no correlation money-wise between Penske Entertainment and Team Penske, the racing division. So you have to believe that to a point, right? Or you're going to think the whole thing's fixed, which it's clearly not, because they kind of showed their hand with that going into the month of May with the team suspensions and then everything else. Obviously, the points loss. McLaughlin came to play after his points lost by pole and a win and get those points back. But really, they came to shine with that front row lockout. And I got to give it to my boy Rossi. He tried. He left it out there. He had that thing trimmed out as far as it could be. And he, I loved his comment about, Penske's making a lot of noise in the garage, how they're going to lock everybody out of the front row. And they did it. They absolutely did it. Overall, it seemed like their suspension package was on point. They did end up with some really good conditions for their runs, and McLaughlin's got a fire in him this year that we just can't, you just can't compare to anywhere else right now. That guy's always been super driven, super motivated. Tell him he can't do it. He'll still party with the boys on Saturday and go out and win a race on Sunday. He's kind of old school IndyCar, right? Like he's very old school mentality when it comes to that. He's not the fittest driver. He's fit, clearly. You have to be. But he likes to have a good time. He appreciates his crew like I've never seen anybody else do. The Thirsty Threes, he's got, they've got their name, they've got it all. So he appreciates his team, which that goes a long way. They're developing quite a culture on that number 3 car, and that's awesome to see. And he's got pole and now the quickest 4-lap average, right? Legendary day for him. That's pretty awesome to see. Like I said, overall qualifying was wild. It was a good one to see. Definitely a good one to see. Moving east, we'll cover, let's talk about NASCAR for a little bit. Obviously, North Wilkesboro, kind of a highly anticipated race, right? It's a little different, short track action for them. They had alternate tire strategy, a lot of cool stuff as far as that goes, other than, again, we're back to, everybody talks about it, we're back to the tires lasting too long, not enough degradation on the tires, a lot of that kind of stuff. So let's cover trucks. Trucks were awesome. We had to split it up between 2 days because of the torrential downpour they got at the track. I'm sure somebody's listening and seen footage of that. That was pretty wild. But stage one, got through stage one on Saturday. Ty Majeski getting it done. Starting up Sunday after a lot of water removal and track drying. Got after it. Stage two, went to Tyler Ankrum. Also awesome to see. I love when it's not a full lockout, right? Like you get a different stage winner each time and then a different race winner, obviously, for stage three, which was Corey Heim. He's on a roll this season. He's doing a great job as well. What I really thought was cool about the truck race was you got to see Jay Garcia lead a race for the first time in trucks. That was pretty cool to see. He's always throwing elbows out, trying to get in there. He got some laps led, and that was pretty awesome to see overall. So really, truck race, I always love the good truck races. They're always fun to watch for me personally. I like that raw, like we're trying to get in the field, and then you get guys, KB's running trucks, earlier this year, who's just going to put it where it needs to go, be aggressive, like it doesn't matter, just getting it done. And so it's cool to see. Obviously, Larson, a couple other guys were running once in a while, but this one was cool, trying to get the trucks done in 2 days. So that was cool. All Star Open, that was a complete domination by Ty Gibbs. He dominated all 100 laps, just kept his distance from everybody, kept a smart strategy. He showed incredible promise for the whole thing on the All Star Open. Obviously, he won the Open, so that transfers him to the All Star race. And then Bubba Wallace coming in second, really fighting hard to keep that spot. So that was good to see. So Ty Gibbs, Bubba Wallace making the transfer from the Open to the All-Star race. Then you had your starting grid for the All-Star race, which would have been cool to see the 60-lap heat qualifiers, which we didn't get to see, unfortunately, with the weather delay and all that. But it was nice that they had a rule book, set up. Starting grid is based on your qualifiers. So that was a nice kind of shake-up that obviously gave to Logano, who, let's be honest, he dominated as well, doing his thing like usual. Love him or hate him, he played a good race. He had a good strategy, stayed out when the other cars didn't, kind of tested the life of those tires. Turned out pretty awesome for him. I think he also, if I remember right, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he dominated that pit cycle. So yeah, overall, he gets the pole, he gets the race win, he does a great job. Second place, that was a pretty cool battle to see. Hamlin, Buescher going at it there for a bit, and then Hamlin trying like hell to get it done. But pulled in second place. Not a bad weekend. Buescher in third, trying to make up for some of the previous events. Overall, podium was pretty solid, somewhat predictable, but pretty solid. Let's talk about Larson for a second, though. Touching back to Indy qualifying, how great he did, putting it right in the middle of the second row. He leaves qualifying, flies to Charlotte, gets on a helicopter, lands at the track, jumps from, I don't remember his starting spot. I want to say it was in the rear of the 20s, but ends up fifth overall in the race. I mean, Hendrick can't be mad. First time rookie, second row qualifying team effort at Indy. 8 hours later, fifth place. So, top five finish at the All-Star race, which is best of the best, right? And the way it's laid out on a short track that's already tough to pass. Let's be honest. That's not a three-wide track as we'll cover here in a minute, but there's spots, but it's not going to last long. And he still, gained 20 plus positions, I believe. So pretty awesome weekend for Larson. Obviously stoked to see what he can accomplish over the next little bit in IndyCar. You got Carb Day coming up. We'll see how he does there. Practice was all right, full fuel loads and things like that. So it's kind of a more interesting practice for him, rather than focused on qualifying, but focused on race trim. He did say that he wanted to cycle. It was kind of nice to hear in his interview where he wanted to cycle into the front, the back, the middle. He wanted to experience everything he could. And I think that'll be good for him overall when it comes to getting himself in a good spot in the 500 as long as keep everybody else from getting in trouble around him. So the Pit Crew Challenge, always an awesome event. I've been to a little bit of the training, a lot of respect for what those guys can do in the time they can do it. 20 team, Joe Gibbs Racing, I believe it's 2 years in a row now they've won the Pit Crew Challenge, the All Star race. Super awesome. They've got some studs on that team. They're fast. I mean, those guys are pure athletes. And, there's no doubt about it. Whatever their background is, which a lot of them are athletes, but whatever their background is, those guys are studs. So that was awesome to see. Now let's talk about what everybody wants to hear about. Stenhouse and Busch, man. So lap 2, going in, Rubbins racing type situation. Ricky tries to come up the middle, bumps into Busch. Busch bumps in the wall, bumps back. Everybody should know, over all these years, if you're going to rub Kyle Busch, he's going to rub you back. So obviously Kyle then pays him back in the next corner, gets him on the left rear, gets him loose, and puts him out of the race. Ricky lost control of it in that corner, puts it in the wall, puts him out of the race. He then pulls a Kyle Busch move and parks it in Kyle Busch's pit box. So knowing into that, there's going to be another couple hours of racing, and then what's going to happen after, right? What's going to happen at the haulers, and it did happen. It definitely did. Obviously, street clothes, relaxed look. Stenhouse comes up to Busch at the hauler. It seemed like they were talking it out to a point, and then he just goes for a blow on Busch. Busch, obviously, he's been down this road before. He gets after it. The crews try to separate him. The crews get after it. I'm sure everybody's seen it. It's pretty awesome for the sport. Obviously, the sportsmanship, this is kind of what goes along with it, right? It's like fighting in hockey as far as I'm concerned. You're not going to see it at all venues of race. But at the All-Star race, you got the money on the line. You're going to see tension. It's going to be high. This is the kind of stuff that happens. And it was kind of to be expected, right? And because Busch did not have a good day on the track. He didn't finish that well. I can't remember exactly what place he was in, but I like how he did mention at the end in the yelling, if you guys have watched the videos and kind of heard the audio of it, where he says, "I suck just as bad as you." So obviously knowing they're both back of the pack cars, not doing a good job, was kind of funny to hear after the fight. And I've got to respect, again, the pit crews. You get those guys coming out there trying to break everybody up, and then you start crowding up in their hauler, and that's when they really got involved. And that was pretty awesome to see them protect their garage, right? That's their garage on wheels. That's where their prayers are held before races. That's where they share strategies. That's their office. That's their cool down, their shop. That is everything to those guys. And to have the fight come into their back door, it was kind of like a scene out of Roadhouse where you start pushing guys out the front door into the parking lot, right? It was just wild to see. And it was good to see. I have a lot of respect for those guys trying to control the situation and not let it get into their hauler, into their sacred domain, if you will. So taken from that, you bump Kyle, he's going to bump you back. And you better be ready for it, or that's what happens, right? It'll put you out. It'll just put you out, and that's what it is. You've got to be ready for it. Let's go to the USAC over the weekend. Kind of made some news there. Silver Crown National event, Belleville. It was looking for sure like Brady Bacon was going to get it. He had a good, strong car. Seemed almost too good to be true. He's got a 15-second lead, and it lets go on him. Expired engine time. Nothing he can do. He's along for the ride, pulls it down to the infield. And that led the opportunity for Kaylee Bryson to take the lead. Not only did she take it, she defended it. She held it for the rest of the race. So congrats to Kaylee. Super awesome. First female to win a Silver Crown National event. She's making history, right? That's history made right there. She's the first one. There'll never be another first because she's the first. So congratulations, Kaylee, on that. I think post-race, her interview, she looks like she was a little bit in shock. Team did great for her. Car ran great. She did a good job driving. She took that high line, kept a little bit in that top line, and just let it happen. And it was awesome to see. Kaylee gets that one. CJ Leary did what he could to try to get it back, coming in behind each corner, trying slides, trying everything. High lines, low lines, couldn't take it away from Kaylee. So congratulations on that. We had World of Outlaws at Attica. Buddy Kofoid got his first win of the season, so that was pretty awesome to see for him. Then we had Sharon Speedway on Saturday. And then, of course, David Gravel, 7th win of the season. He's going to have another good year from the looks of it. there is some dirt news, some Outlaws news, not a whole lot. There's no fights, nationally recognized fights anyway. There's always fights in the pits, but to what level they get picked up on, you know what I mean? From there, let's dive into fantasy picks for a second on the Indy podium. So we got the 108th running coming up this weekend. Podium picks. Personally, looking at my boy Rossi, I'd like to see him get another one. He's had a string of bad luck. He's in his spot with Arrow McLaren now. It's looking good. He's kind of him and Pato are the veterans, obviously. Ilot's good for the race. Clearly that car's got its own news, but Rossi's proven strategy-wise he can get it done. He was fast. He's the fastest non-Penske car out there, so that was good to see. I've got a lot of faith in him if he can, again, keep it away from other guys trying to make lines where there aren't any. Larson would be cool to see. I have him as a podium pick. This isn't necessarily 1, 2, or 3, but I feel like chances are he can get himself on the podium. He's a smart driver. He catches on quick. If he can get in a good line and a good rhythm, I don't think anyone can take it away from him as long as he's up front and doesn't get mixed into somebody else. Other than that, obviously, McLaughlin, he's going to be the one to, the betting odds are in his favor as far as that goes. I would like to see something good come for Daly. Hometown boy, working hard to get so he could race this race, getting his own sponsorships, putting in the man hours on everything. One-off type event. Had the plenum issues, so his starting spot isn't amazing, but he is in the show clearly without problem. He was pretty decently fast in full load practice, so post-qualifying practice, so that was nice to see. You've got Will Power in that mix. What's he going to do? He's always good for a podium. He might be good for another win. And then there's the one that just nipping at the heels with his flow, and that's Ferrucci. Ferrucci would be amazing for the AJ Foyt team. I'm sure Larry would probably be in shock over excitement if he got it. He qualified well. He's fast. He's not afraid. We know that. As long as he can keep his mind on the race and not on Grosjean, I think he's got a good shot. So with that, let's go to underdogs. So underdogs for 108th running of Indy 500 this weekend. Rinus VeeKay, the dude always qualifies. Puts it in the wall on Saturday. They take it back to the garage, goes in gasoline alley. They get it done, come back out, hits 11th fastest for the day, getting him into the fast 12. It's the story of the weekend as far as that goes. And then still gets himself up there. So proven time and time again that he's going to be an awesome driver. He's going to be the one to beat when it comes to qualifying at the 500. He's got, I think, the best overall record in his starts. But can he keep it out of trouble? Can he not goose it out of the pit like he did last year? Little things like that. We'll just see. We'll just see what happens with him. It'd be awesome to see. That'd be good for that Ed Carpenter team. But overall, he's definitely an underdog. Kiffin Simpson, he's making moves. He seems to improve his confidence every time he's driving. He's running mid-pack consistently. He could, if this was F1, he'd be right at trying to get in the points every single race. He'd be close. He's running Ganassi equipment, so he's got good equipment, and he's got a lot ahead of him that I think he's gonna have some good runs. We'll just put it that way. He's gonna have some good runs ahead of him. Let's touch on Marco. Obviously coming back. Marco was crazy fast the first few practices. It didn't transfer to qualifying all that well, but there's a veteran, obviously a refresher, but a veteran. He's got the potential. He's got the Andretti name behind him. He's got the Andretti curse as well, unfortunately, but he had good speed. Nobody can argue he had good speed all week, so we'll see what he does. Another one, Idaho boy like myself, Stingray Robb. Obviously running Foyt with the Penske deal. He's kind of like Ferrucci. Obviously, Ferrucci as a driver has more time behind him, more experience, less fearless. I believe Stingray's still not fully confident in what he's got, and that's okay because he still put it in the show without hesitation. He held it flat out, got a little loose on him, and he kept in it. So he's getting better. He's getting more confident in the car, more confident in the ride. I think he's got this new sponsor under him that's kind of helping him out a little bit. He's realized the importance of a good showing. So he might be something to watch. I don't necessarily, crazy things have happened. I don't think he's going to win. I don't think he's going to podium, but he's easy a top 10 contender for sure if he can keep himself out of trouble and they don't have any issues. He's got that Chevrolet power like the rest of the fast cars, so anything can happen with him. And then my final kind of underdog, RHR, Mr. Ryan Hunter-Reay. Man, so 10 years ago, he won this race. Anniversary date, I mean, that's got to be a good omen. You know, DRR's got 2 cars that are very capable. He put his in the Fast 12. You know, he's got 100% effort. He's got the skill. He had the least amount, I believe. I believe he had the least amount of practice laps, but then still made it in the top 12. Or the Fast 12 for qualifying. So he's definitely something to watch. It would be cool to see 10 years later if he could do like a shoulder pass again through the grass last couple laps and hold on to it. That'd be pretty awesome. But we'll see what happens. Anything's possible at this point. So those are my picks. That's kind of where we're at with the news of what's going on, kind of what this podcast is about. We'll take the time now to do a little history. We want to add history in this podcast. We don't want it to just be a news podcast. My goal for this is to do a lot of history over time. There's a lot of time, a lot of episodes to be had. This is a new thing for us. We're still working on it. But let's cover a little bit of history. So, history lesson of the day. Let's talk a little bit about McLaughlin and the Yellow Submarine, right? That's got a lot of history behind it. So, the Yellow Submarine, McLaughlin's got a full tribute this year. He's got the Rick Mears suit, copycat suit, helmet, very similar. A lot of similarities there. So just a quick backstory. This will be a very short history lesson, but really the Yellow Submarine became famous around 1980. Johnny Rutherford took over driving it. But prior to that, it did make its debut in 1979. When Al Unser first had it. The Chaparral 2K design, Johnny Rutherford said that it pulled more G's in the corners than any other car he had driven up to that point in his career, and then somewhat past that. Lone Star JR, that car in the corners was unbeatable. And I think it went to show Unser obviously splitting off in 1979, going to another team there, 1980. Lone Star JR takes over. You know, they did a little testing. Once Rutherford was in that Chaparral 2K, there was no looking back. He was tagged as the man to beat for the season, for the 500. The money was on him, much the same as it's on McLaughlin this year. So 1980, Rick Mears is leading 500. Lone Star JR, Mr. Johnny Rutherford himself, makes a good pass, leads the field for another 118 laps, ends up in Victory Circle tasting the milk, 1980. Little fun sidebar. A lot of people might remember on his way to Victory Circle, on his cool-down lap, there was a rookie named Tim Richmond whose strategy led him out of fuel on the cool-down, far from the pits, waiting on a ride, and Rutherford sees him, pulls up, gives him a ride back to the garage on the side pod. So that's kind of cool. You know, he's just a good team player that way. Everybody kind of looking out for each other back in the days. Much the same as it is now, a little less tension, but I'm sure there was their moments. I'm a little too young to remember that incident live, but you know, the recaps are pretty awesome on it. So that was the true intro to the Yellow Submarine, which at the time it was not pinned that was a Rick Mears thing. So Rick Mears takes it over, goes on to win 2 Indy 500s in it in 84 and 88 for Penske. That kind of starts the legacy on it, right? So you had a good gap there for a while where Penske and Pennzoil weren't always neck and neck. You had Panther Racing in 2001, 2002, and 2003 with Sam Hornish Jr. running it. Very similar, obviously slightly different, but a very similar livery as the Yellow Submarine. And then they brought it back, in 2011. Elio runs it and ran a lot of repeats through that time. They came back again with McLaughlin in 2021, 2023, and then now he's got it on pole. So a little quick history of the Yellow Submarine livery with Pennzoil. Obviously a couple different numbers over the years on those cars. Overall, pretty awesome to see that kind of classic thing lives on. And I know when a lot of people think of like IndyCar, and that they end up thinking about like the yellow Pennzoil, and then obviously you got the crossover with Logano's livery in NASCAR and everything else. So a little history lesson there. Other than that, make your picks for the 500. Send them in if you'd like. We'll do a recap episode after the 500 on where we think we're at with everything, and hopefully have a good Memorial Day weekend of racing and see how things go. So until next time, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Don't forget to follow us at HistoricHotLaps on X and all your other social platforms for the latest updates and sneak peeks into upcoming episodes. You can reach out to us directly at HistoricHotLaps@gmail.com. Send us your feedback, questions, comments, opinions, and additional subject matter you'd like us to cover. Thanks for tuning in.